Hello, and here we are today with Charlotte Chipperfield. Hello, Charlotte. So lovely to see you again.
Yes, hello. So great to be here again.
It is, it's lovely. Now, Charlotte, you and I first met, well, actually we met before May 2017, but your podcast went to air on the May 2017, and your business was just celebrating its third anniversary then. So we know that businesses change over time. So let's start with, what is your business? Tell us what business are you in?
Yes, absolutely. So my business is called Chipperfield Media, and I operate in the world of marketing. When I started my business back in 2014, it's kind of crazy to think it's now 7 years since I started my business, but things have definitely changed and shifted a little bit in that time period. When I started the company, I was operating a lot more like a marketing agency and offering services to clients, primarily within the wine industry, helping them with a lot of their digital marketing content-wise, so producing content, doing social media, and email marketing were kind of the main 3 avenues of services that I had. And so I would say there's been a shift, a shift of still helping clients with their marketing. I focus now on really helping impact-driven entrepreneurs to create a very intentional and sustainable marketing plan to empower them to become more confident in owning their message so that they can really have the impact on the world that they want to have. And so I kind of consider myself more of a marketing success catalyst now, in the sense that I don't do a lot of the execution, but I really help people create the bigger vision and connect their marketing to what that looks like in their business. So for me, over the years, and even the last time we talked, through that time of helping clients do their email marketing, social media, I found that I took a step back and really looked at, what were the clients who were most successful with these different avenues, and why was that? And what I found is that the companies and clients who had a really clear vision that was connected to their why and were able to really communicate that story are the ones that were the most successful. And so I sort of backed out my services and really got clear at the beginning and helped people really solidify and lean into their core values to set the foundation for then building a marketing plan and strategy so that, your Facebook ads aren't totally isolated from what you're doing in finance and your business goals. Like there's this cohesion, if you will.
Yeah, no, that's lovely. It's so important that it's just one approach, isn't it? That it's not so scattered. I love that, sales catalyst. That's a terrific expression, isn't it? Yeah. Is that what you call yourself?
It is. That's what I'm calling myself now. Yes.
I think that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So you've told us how your business has changed over the time. How have your customers changed? And, sort of in what way are they different? Because, I know that having worked with many businesses over years, as the ideal customer changes, and you talked there about identifying who your ideal customer was through the success that they had. But how have customers changed?
Yes, that's a great question. And yes, they have definitely evolved and changed over time. And when I started the company, I was working primarily with wineries because I came from a wine marketing background. And for me, I found that a lot of the same principles I was using with those winery clients could be applied across multiple industries. So I kind of was able to expand my scope and work with clients in various different industries, which was fun for me because I got to learn a ton about other industries. And then there became this kind of question. People kept asking me like, well, what's your niche? Like, who do you serve? And it became harder and harder for me to actually answer that question. And so again, in this process of sort of taking a step back, I was able to really ask myself, again, not only what clients are being most successful, but what were the characteristics of the clients I enjoy working with the most? And I actually found the answer to that question had nothing to do with industry. It was more about the principles and the character of the people behind the company. And so it was, again, thinking about people who are kind of high achievers and are really leading with both their head and their heart are the people that I love working with. And I think that's a very clear distinction of understanding the people who are willing to build or are striving to build companies that have bigger impact than just making a quick dollar.
I love that. That's such a great answer. And it's so interesting because I'm doing some work with clients that I have, and while they work in the wellness industry, and traditionally we think of, who is the ideal client from kind of a functional point of view, but I think what you're saying there is it's the characteristic of the person, the high achieving, the person who's, you know, leading with their head and their heart. And that could come in all shapes and sizes. So, you know, it's an industry. So this idea of niching is really changing, I think, as we move into this next phase of business. Wonderful answer. Thank you. So, Charlotte, how do you find new customers? How do you find these high achieving, head, heart leading people?
That is a great question. I think it's a question I haven't found the full answer to. I mean, it's a lot of now trying to take my own advice that I give clients when it comes to marketing my own business.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's kind of been a trifecta of things that work. I mean, one, I've been really fortunate and lucky to have referrals from other clients or people in my network. I also spend time really like expanding my own and developing my own thought leadership. So doing that through writing articles for different platforms. I recently became a contributor to Sway Media, which is a platform dedicated to elevating female voices in media. And so that's been fun for me to write about marketing and entrepreneurship and that journey. And then I do find presentations to organizations that are aligned with my values and again are helping to support sort of social impact entrepreneurs or those that again are kind of leading with that heart and mind and thinking about, you know, the people, profit, and planet, like a B corporation.
Yeah.
So trying to align myself and getting my philosophy and ideas out to like-minded individuals has been pretty helpful in finding new customers.
Yeah, and so if we were looking for you, I'll shamelessly tell us your website right now. So your website, how do we find you online in a website sense?
Yes, my website is chipperfieldmedia.com.
Chipperfield. We'll put these in the show notes, but just because it's easy when people are listening if they want to jump in. And would we find you on LinkedIn, or are you an Instagram fan, or are you a Facebook? Where do you spend most of your time sharing your thought leadership?
Yes, I spend most of my time on Instagram, which I'm at Charlotte Chipperfield. And then I do share a lot on LinkedIn as well, which is also at Charlotte Chipperfield.
Yeah, and then we'll be able to find you in Sway Media. So
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
look forward to reading more of that. So we'll all be subscribing to that one. Yeah, we'll make sure we put all these notes in the show notes. Okay, so viability. So have you changed how you think about the business's viability over the years? Because, you know, one of the things that I'm particularly interested in talking to people about is the financial independence that people seek to get from being in their own business. You know, I mean, if it's not a business, it's not a business paying you, it's not a business, it's a hobby and it's an interest. And so viability, have you thought, and you can talk about pricing here as well, has your philosophy around pricing and business viability changed in the last 3 years? And how have you seen that change?
Yes. I mean, I think this is something that I try and evaluate at least every year, if not more often than that. And I think what we talked about the last time I was on the podcast was I was shifting from kind of charging hourly into a retainer model, which I'm so thankful I did that. I think that's so important. It's really hard to scale and grow when you're constantly trading dollars for minutes. And so for me, the retainer took away a lot of that time I spent just tracking my hours, because you'd be amazed how much time that just takes. And then trying to like justify that to the client or them being more surprised how long something took. So for me, the retainers have been really nice because I can kind of just jump in and do what I need to do here and there, especially when I help, you know, manage the communities online for brands and for companies, you know, that just checking Instagram for a couple minutes here and there, like it's hard to just track that. So yeah, for me, moving to the retainer model has been really helpful in, you know, helping the clients know what they're spending, but then also helping me know what's coming in. And so for me, in the last 2 years, I've been really focused on kind of thinking about what other revenue streams could be created. So for me, what I did this year, and even as COVID hit, it gave me the opportunity to really invest the time into building my own course. So it's called the Holistic Marketing Roadmap. So this is really helping people to create their own marketing roadmap through a self-paced course. And so that is just another way for me to kind of package my knowledge to help serve more people in a way that maybe they're not going to be able to work with me on a monthly retainer or go through this system one-on-one. So this makes it more accessible to more people. So it's really coming from a place of, yes, I want to help people, but then it also allows me to kind of capture my knowledge in one place and create a revenue stream that is kind of, it's there, but I don't have to maintain it, if that makes sense.
It does. And will we find that roadmap on your website? Is that where we would find that? Beautiful.
Yep, you can
So
absolutely hook to that.
I think one of the things that's really helpful about having the roadmap, having an online course, is that it becomes virtual Charlotte doing some of the work that you can't do every single time that you're dealing with or working with a client. But if somebody does the course and then comes and works with you, they're in better shape to come and work with you, aren't they? Because they've got much more understanding. I mean, whether they go through every single module or whether they go through some of them, and maybe, because I think what happens is people kind of know bits about all sorts of things, don't they? Do you find that with marketing, that you know a bit about this and a bit about that? And so maybe we don't need the whole course, but we need 85% of it, and then we can come and work with you in a different sort of way, because we've got the knowledge that virtual Charlotte gave us through our course, and then we can come and work with you in person and get much more out of that relationship, I think. Is that fair to say?
Yes, absolutely. And I definitely designed this course to be a very foundational piece and to help strip away a lot of the shoulds that we hear about. I think in marketing, it's so easy to see the 5 things that you're supposed to be doing within your marketing, right? But do these 6 things on social media. And there's so much information. There's almost too much information at this point. And so being able to understand the context of some of those tips and what's really going to align and work for your company versus trying to be in all places at once, because I think that leads us all to burnout, and then we're not sure what's working, what isn't working. And so then we just quit doing everything because it's just too time consuming. So my goal really in this course was to really help kind of pull people to that 10,000 foot view and really look at who they are as a company. So the first part of the course is all focused on really defining your why and your purpose and who you serve, so that then you know where to be present, because you only really need to be on the platforms where your customers are most active. And so when you can really hone in on where they are most active, then you can really start to craft your message for those platforms to meet them where they are.
Yeah.
And then from there, you can kind of create the marketing plan. So that's really my goal, is to really help kind of build this foundational piece so that honestly, you never have to make your marketing strategy from scratch again. It's really, when you are anchored into who you are and who you serve, then I think the path forward becomes a lot more clear.
Yeah. And you know, it just goes back to this whole notion of why we get into business in the first place. We get into business for us, but we really need to get into business for our customers, because it's what they need. And I hear this from so many people. And in fact, I'm having a bit of a struggle with it myself, Charlotte, because everyone talks about Instagram and I'm not there yet. I haven't gone there, but everyone says it's where people are. And then there's, of course, a whole new generation on TikTok. And there's, you know, so if you're appealing to an audience, it's super, super important to be where they are. And even if this is your favorite platform, it might not be your target audience's favorite platform. So it's great, great information there. Thank you. Exit strategy. Now, I know that in episode 30, and this is episode 130, that you told us that you could do this for the rest of your life. Is this still the case? Or are you thinking about a succession plan or an exit strategy? Tell us.
Yes. Yeah, I think this question is always kind of open-ended. I don't know the exact answer, because none of us can predict the future, as no one predicted this year. But I think I will always be an entrepreneur in some capacity. I think that's something that I will always be doing. I think the way that takes shape is going to change over time. And I even love kind of how my company has morphed, and it's kind of fun talking about the path that my own company has taken. And as I grow and expand and learn, you know, so does the business. And so I kind of stopped putting like the pressure to have an answer to that. I think for me, I am really focused on the next 3 years and really leaning into this model and the system and really helping as many people as I can. And for me, I think once I focus on creating that impact, you know, in 3 years' time, I think the next step is going to present itself as to, you know, either what clients need or what I need. And so for me, I think the answer is I will always be an entrepreneur, but I do love marketing and storytelling. So I don't think I'll veer that far away from it, but the way I show up and serve maybe a little bit different.
That's a wonderful answer, Charlotte. I love that idea of that you will always be an entrepreneur. That's the truth of it, isn't it? So you mentioned that we're talking in 2020 and it's been a year nobody expected. But being in business without this, there's tough days. Like there's good days, bad days, tough days. What sort of things, and we all know that COVID has caused its own problems, but setting that aside, what sort of things make it tough to be in business?
Oh, where do I start? I feel like there's definitely tough days in business. There's also amazing days in business. And so I think it's kind of being able to ride the ride and know you're signing up for a ride when you do start your business. I think one of the biggest lessons for me has been to pay attention to like how I'm feeling, like what's energizing me and what's draining my energy. So looking at the different activities, or maybe it is clients that I'm working with. I've had some, and especially in the early days of my business, where we were not probably the best match to be working together. And that's okay. I think that's all learnings. And, that taught me a lot about being better at vetting who I'm working with. So for me, one of the signs for me when I'm like having a tough day is that I'm starting to get really frustrated. And so I will feel really frustrated if I'm not getting what I wanted to get done, or I feel like there's lots of interruptions, or that's kind of my sign to step away from the computer. So I kind of get up, go for a walk, go smell the roses, whatever it is that I need to do. It's just kind of physically get away from the computer a little bit and just take that breath. And, meditation has been a big part of my life now. And just taking a few moments away to like make a cup of tea and just kind of recenter into who I am, and even connecting back to my own why. It's something that I now have like up on the wall. It's there for me to reference and refocus on why I'm showing up each day. And so for me, it's kind of just doing something that makes me feel alive and brings me joy is really important, just to nurture myself, because it's kind of that whole saying that if you're pouring from an empty cup, you really can't help other people. So I've learned to really just, that nurturing myself is the priority, because that helps me show up better in every area of my business.
That's wonderful. It's amazing how often that expression comes up. You can't pour from an empty cup. I'm actually curious if it's something women tend to say more. I don't know that I hear too many men saying they can't pour from an empty cup.
Interesting.
Interesting. I'll do some research on that.
I don't know.
It's getting topped up all around them. It's so fascinating you say that about stepping away from a computer, because sometimes when we are feeling frustrated or things aren't working quite the way we want them to, just by taking some breaths, making a cup of tea, stepping away, you come back and somehow you can see something that you didn't see before, or a thought comes to you that you hadn't thought of. You're right, that space just gives you, and that's what puts something back in the cup, isn't it? It's just by being away.
Yes, I think so often we think if we just crunch like another hour or two on the computer, like just like push through, that we're just going to magically have the answer to everything and do great work. But it is amazing when you step away. And I mean, I'm guilty of trying to just push certain tasks to the weekend and be like, I'll get it done this weekend. But the power in actually taking the weekends off is amazing, where I'll be reading a book, or I'll drive to the ocean, or whatever it is, that I will have the most amazing ideas, or think about, what if I change this in my course, or what if I wrote this blog post? And you have these amazing ideas that come up because you're not trying to force it to happen. It just naturally flows a lot more because you're not putting that pressure on yourself.
Yeah, there's an example somewhere about the strength actually happens in the pauses. I think it's in fitness. If you do the muscles all the time, it actually stresses them. But it's the recovery in the muscle is where it actually builds. So I'll have to check that fact. You can fact check that, people, as you're listening. We can't do it all ourselves. So what does your team look like now? Because I know when we spoke, you were looking at having some other people help you. You had some part-time team. What does your team look like now?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in the beginning, when I was creating or had more of the agency model, I was really hoping to build like a boutique agency and have full support for full-time people. It's a tongue twister. For me, that didn't quite pan out as I had planned, and it just didn't make sense to bring on people full time. And so I've been really lucky to have some really key contractors that I've worked with. So I've been able to bring in people to help support, creating content calendars or scheduling posts and doing analytics. So that's been really great to kind of allow, my business to ebb and flow, but then still have that support there as well. So I've definitely relied on contractors that are very helpful and usually know more than I do in specific areas. So
yeah.
Really
Is that what we call the Hollywood model, is where you have these, you kind of bring people together for doing the work you need, and then they all go off and do what they do? And I think I heard somebody call that the Hollywood. It's sort of, you think about a movie, they bring all the people together for a period of time, and, you need people to help you with certain things, so you bring them in when you need them.
I love that. I hadn't heard that before, but that sounds really glamorous. I like it.
So next time someone says to you, what's your team like? You just say you're using the Hollywood model. So
yes, I will.
I love models. I love analogies and models. Okay, so coaching, mentoring, have you had one? Do you have one? What role do they play? Are they important? Tell us what you think.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I think coaching has been so valuable for me. I have worked with different kind of coaches over the years. I think initially I didn't know what a business coach did, right? It was kind of like, I don't know, do I need one? What happened? Until I kind of dove in and worked with one and was like, oh my gosh, should have done that sooner. But I think there's been so much value in working with coaches. And I have worked specifically with business coaches who have worked or helped me go through a mastermind with other individuals. And then I've also worked one-on-one. And then I found that, through some of that, it wasn't necessarily the strategy and the planning that I was stuck on, because I'm actually really good at that, which is why I'm really good at marketing, is that strategy and planning piece. But there was a lot of mindset and beliefs that had to be overcome. And, one of my coaches used to say that you can only grow yourself or grow your business as much as you're growing yourself. And I think that is so true. And for me, there's definitely been beliefs around money that have come up, and I've had to do the work to really understand where they come from and how to shift those. And even right now, I have a coach who's not a business coach, but she's an NLP coach, so neuro-linguistic programming. And I am like obsessed now with neuroplasticity and like how our brains work and how you can reprogram. And so that's kind of the world I'm living in coaching right now, which I think has moved me further along faster than anything I've done before. And it's not only like fascinating and I get to geek out on it, but I've really seen some big shifts that have happened. And I think that's such an important piece to business and entrepreneurship that we don't talk about as much. I mean, people talk about mindsets, but I think they just think you can put a motivational quote on the wall and then you're going to have this massive success, where really it is kind of taking that assessment like we would of our business, but of ourselves, and kind of thinking, what are our values and how are they serving us or not serving us anymore?
Yeah, and where do the beliefs lead to values, lead to behaviours, lead to outcomes, lead to actions, how that cycle all comes together. I think one of the most powerful things about understanding neurologically how we work is that we can make any changes we want, that we can make the choice in our mind. It takes work to create new habits, to create new patterns, but the brain actually can be retrained, unless there's something specifically damaged, like if you were hit over the head with something. I mean, if there's actual physical damage, you can't, but the brain is plastic and it can be moved. Yeah, which is where the neuroplasticity comes from. It's just fantastic.
Yeah, it is fantastic. And I think what's so exciting is like, yes, it can change, but the hard work comes in is once you've made that decision to change, it doesn't just happen. And I think that's where the value of having a coach is because it gets crunchy and sticky and icky and uncomfortable. And so having that coach there is someone that just can reiterate that, like, that's normal. And you're literally changing your brain and your belief systems. Like, you kind of have to push through that to get to the other side. And that's the beautiful, powerful part of it.
It is. And being able to be reflective and being able to go back and think about how things might have been different. and then how we do it differently the next time, and to reinforce that for future. Yeah, fantastic. Sounds like you've kind of answered my next question about feedback, but how we all need to know how we're going along the way. So what does feedback mean to you, and who gives you really useful feedback?
Yes, I mean, I think feedback is something you can get in all kind of shapes and sizes. And, I get feedback from clients and, my network. And I also am part of a peer entrepreneur group too. So there's also feedback there, and, family and friends. And I think we all can gain different opinions throughout our life. And so for me, I think also one of the challenges over the years of being an entrepreneur is really understanding what feedback has weight to it and what feedback doesn't have weight to it. And I think that was a hard lesson to learn, because it's really easy to kind of take everyone's feedback, especially when you're first starting out, and then constantly morphing and changing based on that feedback. And so I think that's where we kind of get into this, I call it shoulding town, which is like this place where we go, it's like everyone's telling you what you should be doing. And so you start doing all of that, but then you realize you've built something that is not what you intended to build. So for me, it's really looking at where is the feedback coming from. So if someone has never built a course, but they're telling me this is how you do it, then that feedback, I might just say, thank you, I appreciate that, and not pay any more attention to it. Where, I'm listening to someone who's built 5 courses and have made millions of dollars from it, that feedback is going to be way more valuable because they've been there, they've walked this path. So I think that's also really important. And it's harder with the negative feedback, but that's something, again, looking at where that's coming from, because I think sometimes other people can project their fears or their insecurities around if they were to do that thing that you're doing, and that can just kind of feed into our own fears versus empowering us to take that step forward anyway. So yeah, I would say the feedback that matters most to me is really my clients, because I want to make sure that I'm really helping and empowering them. And then everything else is sort of just knowing when to put the blinders on and just kind of say thank you and just pay no more attention to it. And then really seek out the people who have been where you are and are further ahead to understand how they got there and what the lessons are.
That's such a great answer. And I'm just thinking, as you're saying it there, that, you said earlier about we can't pour from an empty cup, and our cup needs to be filled up with the positive. And I think if we're feeling a bit empty and a bit depleted, that negative stuff takes up space, and that it makes it more difficult to push that away. And that sort of ties back to, one of the things that's tough in business is that there are the naysayers. There's people who haven't got a clue what you're doing, who have an opinion, and it could be good intentioned. And if we're solid, if we're really keeping ourselves, like with a coach, keeping ourselves learning new things, growing ourselves, there isn't room for that. Like the cup's full. It's, we're keeping it reinvigorated by having weekends off. Like it's all part of the same part of how we build ourselves as business people and entrepreneurs. Yeah, wonderful. Terrific answers, Charlotte. I knew this was going to be a good interview. So I always ask people 3 characteristics that they have. And previously you mentioned diligence, patience, and a sense of humour. Now, are these still your key characteristics, or have you developed in this stage of your business some other ways of being who you need to be able to take the business to its next stage?
Yes, I know, it's so interesting to have that kind of reflection piece of where I was a few years ago. I would still say a sense of humor is absolutely needed. I think not taking things too seriously. I mean, I'm totally guilty of doing it, but I think the more kind of humor you can bring to it is important. I would say my other 2 characteristics have changed, though. I think for me, I have, I don't know, really strengthened my own voice and my own message. So I would say I'm actually a lot more bold because I have a very authentic message. And through this growth, I've been able to really lean into who I am and kind of drop a lot of the fear that comes up with putting yourself out there, and really just kind of leaning into my purpose and my message, and really, again, focusing on who I'm helping. It's not really about me. It's ultimately trying to come forward and show that, marketing doesn't necessarily have to be so serious. It is a serious part of our business, but like when we can be playful and learn to be our own authentic selves to show up and connect with the people we want to connect with. I mean, at the end of the day, marketing really is relationships. And so it's building those relationships. So I would say that I'm definitely leaning more boldly into my authentic self and message.
That's lovely. I love that. I was just re-listening to a podcast episode from around about yours, actually, and he was saying to be solid and to, oh, I can't remember what the other was, but bold was one of the things that he talked about, that in business you have to be bold. Energy, solid, and you have to have good energy and be bold. So I love that you use that word bold. It's a great word, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, so here we are. You're, in your 7th year of business, and someone comes to you who's not in a business and says, "Oh, I'm thinking about starting my own business." What's your immediate response to that? How do you respond to someone who's thinking about starting a business?
Yes, well, I'd probably sit down with that person for like an hour over a cup of coffee, or over Zoom now, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think I would go back to the why. I would ask them why. Like, why are you going into business? And I think the more clear you can be on that answer, I think, again, it's going to help you make decisions moving forward.
Yeah.
If it's just to make money, then I would, invite that person to probably take a little more time and dig deeper into why they want to have their own business. But then I think if the why is clear, then it's really getting started. And it can be really easy to get stuck in, maybe you need a business plan, or maybe I need all these tools and this technology, and I need a website and a logo. And yes, maybe you need some of those things, but you can also just get started in smaller ways, and you're going to learn a lot along the way. And sometimes I think entrepreneurship is almost just failing forward, and it's sort of just showing up, trying, and then what works you keep doing, what isn't working you leave that behind. So I think my advice would be to get very clear on your why. And then second is just to start, jump in. You're going to learn and perfect as you go. So.
Yeah. I love that. Fabulous. Thank you. Charlotte, as we bring this to a close, and it's been a wonderful conversation, is there anything else that I haven't asked you that you'd like to cover? Thinking about, business and, the reasons we get into business to serve, anything else that you'd like to add before we go?
Yeah, I would just add, as people are even taking that marketing lens and thinking about their business, is to really, again, think about your core values of your company. There's a lot of companies that I think skip over that, either solopreneurs or large corporations. We see this too, where their core values are just like a poster in the lunchroom, and they're not something that are actually lived and breathed every day. And for me, those are really, really important from a marketing perspective, because it actually makes your communication, your message, easier to craft. And again, you're going to pull in customers that really resonate to those values. And I ultimately encourage clients to use those values as their content pillars. So as they're building their content calendars, you've got these sort of 4 or 5 themes that you're constantly reiterating, that not only strengthens what your company stands for, but again becomes a very clear message to your customers on who you are, what you stand for, and what you provide.
Yeah, I'm going to leave that right there, because that's a beautiful way to finish. Charlotte, thank you so much for your time today. And look forward to the next 3 years.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.